Hello. In this video, we're looking at 2.7 Domain and Range Part 2. So last time we had Domain and Range Part 1, we looked at graphs that had a starting point and an ending point. What's going to be different for today is that we're going to add an arrow at the end on one end. So we'll have a starting point on one at the beginning and then an arrow at the other end. Talk about what that difference that makes for domain and range. Now, I know that this is problem number one, and we're going to do problem number one, but first, we're actually going to do problem number two. And that's because problem number one is just a little bit weird and different. And I wanted to do problem number two first because it's more similar to what we did last time. We have better lead in. So we'll go back and hit problem number one in just a second. But we're going to start actually with problem number two. All right, so problem number two, I'm going to answer, what is the domain? And what is the range? Okay. Now, important. The domain is our x's. Okay. Domains are x's, and range is our y values. So domain is left and right, range is up and down. All right. So the first thing we're going to say for domain is, well, how far can we go to the left? So we go as far left as we can. We get to this open point right there. And notice that that open point right there is at -6. Okay. Now, just like last time, we're going to have x here. We're going to put our little symbol like this because we have our values are greater than -6. -6 is the least. And because that right there is an open point, I'm not going to put an equal to. So see that equal to line right there? We're not going to put it because there's an open point. If it was a closed point, I would put an equal to line. So that's how far it goes to the left. How far does it go to the right? Well, you might be looking at say, well, I guess it goes to 8. But that arrow right there means it goes forever. Okay. Now, if it's going forever to the right, that means it's going to infinity. So write our little sideways 8 for infinity. And so when I'm going to infinity, I never put it equal to line. So that right there is a way of writing the domain. Okay. That's a way of writing the domain. Another way of writing the domain would be to just cut off that. If you just wrote that right there, that's also correct. Okay. So whether you include the infinity over there or whether you just kind of cut it off right there, those actually both mean the same thing. I'll rewrite that in a different color just so I can show. All right. So if you wrote it like this, that's correct. Also, one other way, and this is how it's probably going to end up looking on your test. Oops, use green though. Use a different color, is we could just flip all of this around, including the sign, and I could put the X first. Again, think of that sign as an alligator. The alligator's trying to eat the X, so it still needs to try to eat the X. And I could write my answer like that. All three of those are correct answers. Okay. One in blue is why that's probably most likely going to look on your test. They like to put the X first. Okay? But all three of those are technically correct answers. There's for a domain. Now let's look at the range. Erase some of my writings on here. Now, range isn't asking about how far left and how far right it goes. Range is asking, well, how far down and how far up does it go? Well, let's start off with down. Well, how far down? Well, again, that arrow's going down forever. And if it's going down forever, I'm going to start off with infinity. But I want to be able to tell the difference between going down to infinity and going up to infinity. So wherever we're talking about going down or going left to infinity, we put a negative, right? Negative to show us which direction we're going. All right. And so use that symbol, not equal to, because we never put it equal to with infinity. We're going to use the letter y to show that we're talking about range. And then I need to ask, well, okay, well, that's how far down we're going. We're going down forever. How far up are we going? Well, we're going to go up to this point right here, that same point, but now we got to use our y values. Well, what y value is that? Well, it's in between 2 and 4. In between 2 and 4 must be the number 3. Again, it's an open point, so my symbol is going to look like that. All right, just like with domain, a couple ways I could write my answer. I could leave my answer just like that, perfectly fine. I could just cut off just that because, again, that infinity is, if I leave off the infinity, then it's implied that that is infinity. So I could write my answer as y is less than 3. And for this one, I don't even need to rearrange it because the variable's already on the left. So that right there is most likely what that would look like on your test. Okay. Again, as far as on your paper, if you choose to write your answer like this and leave it like that, that's perfectly fine. Okay. Still the correct way of writing it. All right. So that's how we do domain and range when I have an arrow. Now let's go back and hit number 1, the one that I skipped. Okay. Let's talk about what makes this one kind of weird and different. Right. Get rid of that. Right. So for this one, I'm going to start off with the range because the range is normal on this one. The range says, well, how far down and how far up do I go? Well, let's start off with how far down my graph goes. It goes down to this point right here, which is at -4. It's a closed point, so I can put my equal to line. I'm talking about range, so we're going to use y. How far up does it go? Well, if I'm starting there, I'm going up forever. So we could draw it like that. Again, leave it like that, perfectly fine. If I just left off the infinity side, I'd have -4 less than or equal to y. That's okay. But again, how they're going to write their answer is they're going to put the variable on the left. So if I just flip everything around, I put the y here, the -4 here. Remember that alligator is trying to eat the y. No, that's not proper way of writing this. We would read this as -4 is less than or equal to y. Well, I need to flip it all around like that. And that is how that's most likely going to look on your test. All right, so there's our range. What about the domain? Because domain says how far does it go to the left and how far does it go to the right? Well, let's think about left and right. It doesn't go left and it doesn't go right at all. It just goes straight up and down. It stays. So if I think about for the x-axis, it stays at that one number. Okay. If it's only going to hit one number, then I'm going to write my answer in a completely different way. It's only hitting, well, what is that number? Well, it's in between -4 and -6, so it's got to be -5. It's -5. So my domain is -5, and it's just staying at -5. Our domain's x's, so we're just going to say x equals -5. It doesn't go left, it doesn't go right, it stays at -5. And so if it happens like that, I just write x equals -5. And that's how we write our domain for a vertical line like that. Okay. I know that was a bit of a weird case, but you're going to see one like that pop up again before the end of this worksheet. All right. So you saw 2 examples. See if you can beat me to numbers 3 or 4, or maybe if you're not feeling too confident, try just number 3. And then after I do number 3, pause the video and then you can try number 4. All right, let's look at number 3. Number 3 has a little bit of a trick to it as well. Let's see here. We got our start off with our domain. Our domain on this one's the easier of them. So let's think about when I have x. How far do we go to the left. Well, I got an arrow there, so that means I'm going to go to infinity. And when I'm talking about infinity going to the left, I use a negative, not equal to. How far do I go to the right? Well, this right here, that's the rightmost point. And I see for x values, it's at 6. It's a solid point, so equal to. Well, again, different ways I could write my answer. I could write it like that, or I could just write it as x less than or equal to 6. That's fine as well. All right, so that's our domain. Our domain on this one was fairly straightforward, but let's look at the range. Range is using our y values. All right, so range starts off with how far down does it go? Well, this right here is my lowest point. Again, it got to use y values. So right here, that is the y value at my lowest point, -2. It's in the middle of my line. If it's in the middle of the line, I always use equal to. But then here comes the trick or the trap on this one. How far up do I go? If I just look at my graph and I don't think too much about it, then I might say, oh, well, this point right here is the highest point that I see on the blue line. Okay, because this over here doesn't quite get up to the x-axis and that one does. And so I might, if I make a big mistake, I might say 6, thinking, oh, that's an x value. That's the number closest to it, but that's an x value. I would say 0 because that's what the correct y value would be. But both of those are wrong. And the reason why both of those would be wrong is because this arrow right here, try to use a different color. That arrow right there is still going up. And so even though it stops right there because it gets to the edge of my graph, remember that arrow is going to keep going up forever. Okay, it's not going to stop going up. And so I'm really going up to infinity. Okay, so even though it's kind of hard to tell on this graph, my range is actually going up to positive infinity. All right, so that is my correct range for this one. Again, a couple ways of writing it is, well, if I just kind of isolate this part right here, and then I think, oh, they're going to want the variable on the left, so if I flip that around, I'd get y greater than or equal to -2, and it would look just like that. All right. If you haven't already, pause the video here, see if you can try number 4. Right, so let's look at number 4. Start off with domain. With this one, my domain says, well, how far do I go to the left? Well, this is the leftmost part, and my leftmost is at -1. It's in the middle of the line, so equal to. How far do I go to the right? Well, again, that arrow right there is moving up and to the right, so it's going to go to the right forever. So I could leave my domain like that, or if I rewrite it, I could isolate this part of it, flip it around, and I'd get x is greater than or equal to -1. There's my domain. Let's look at range. I'm going to put my y value in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and put my signs there. It might have an equal to there. We'll see. All right, so range says how far down, how far up. Started with down. Well, the lowest point is right there. What y value are we at? Well, we're sitting at a y value of -5. And it's an open point, so not equal to. Well, then I think, okay, well, how far up does my graph go? Well, my graph's going to keep going up forever. So over here I have infinity. Good. Leave it like that. Or if you isolate and then flip, we'd have y is greater than -5. That would be my domain and range for number 4. All right. So if you're good with numbers 1 through 4, go ahead and try 5, 6, 7, and 8. Next problem I'll pick up on is number 9. Number 9 at first glance might not look different, but there is a big difference once I get to problem number 9. All right, so for number 9, I said there's a difference. Here's what my difference is. We got an arrow here, and we have an arrow here, okay? So if I have an arrow at both ends, that means I could potentially, depending on what we're talking about, domain or range, or maybe even both, go have infinity on both ends. All right, so let's go over this one. Domains are x's. Domain says, how far do we go to the left? How far do we go to the right? Well, if I go to the left, well, I got that arrow right there. That goes to forever, so we're going to put a negative infinity. Well, what about going to the right? How far do I go to the right? Well, again, on the far right side, I have that arrow right there, and that also goes to infinity. So again, that right there is a perfectly correct way of writing your answer. Now, this is a very specific case. Whenever I have negative infinity on the left and positive infinity on the right, basically that means everything. X hits every single number from negative infinity to positive infinity. Whenever I have this case, sometimes people will just write all real numbers. And then once you get like algebra 2 or pre-cal, then we'll start actually putting some symbols for all real numbers as well. But for our purposes, we're just going to stick with these two ways. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this, I think I mentioned it in the previous lesson, that we're going to hit domain and range again next chapter. And when we get to those next chapter, we're going to look at what's called interval notation. So if maybe you've seen domain and range before, but you're like, I use like parentheses and brackets, don't worry, we're going to get to that. We're just getting to those next chapter. All right, this one we called inequality notation. All right, so there we go. So there's my domain. Let's look at the range. Range is going to use our y. We go ahead and put our symbols there. Start off with how far down does my graph go? Well, again, it doesn't really matter which arrow I look at. Both arrows are going down forever, so I have negative infinity. How far up are we going? Well, that's the highest point, and that's at a y value of 2, and it's in the middle of the line, which means we're going to put an equal to line there. All right. So again, just like before, I could leave my answer like that, or if I just cut off that, I could write it just like that, and the variable's already on the left, so there we go. I could leave my answer just like that as well. So there's number 9. Let's look at number 10. There we go. All right, starting off with my domain. Put next there in the middle. Domain says, how far do we go to the left? Well, notice that I have an arrow pointing to the left. I have another arrow pointing to the left. So this one definitely goes left forever. So negative infinity. Well, what about to the right? How far can it go to the right? Well, it can't go forever. It actually right there. That's as far as it goes to the right. And that's at an x value of 6. And because it's in the middle of my line, I'm going to put the little equal to line there. All right, and so there's my domain. Again, perfectly correct. Leave it like that, or I can just kind of cut off that part and just write that, also correct. Got range. All right, let's see what we got going on for range. How far down does my graph go? Well, down here I see an arrow going down, so that means it's going to go down forever. How far up does it go? Well, got an arrow up here going up, so that means it's going to go up forever. So I have negative infinity to positive infinity. Well, we just said on the previous problem that if I have negative infinity to positive infinity, another way of writing that would just be to say all real numbers. So the range is negative infinity to positive infinity or all real numbers. All right. If you're feeling confident, you can pause the video and try 11 and 12. Otherwise, just try 11. We'll go over that one together, and then you can try 12. Number 11, domain. How far to the left does the graph go? As I follow my graph to the left, I see an arrow right there going forever to the left. So negative infinity. And I ask, well, how far to the right does it go? Arrow right there going forever to the right, meaning positive infinity. Oh, what that means, I could just write all real numbers for my domain. Let's look at the range. Range says, how far down does it go? Oh, well, this one does not have an arrow at the bottom. Right there, that's as low as the graph can go, and that's at -2. It's in the middle of the graph, so equal to. Then let's see here, how far up does the graph go? Well, I got two different arrows pointing up, so it goes up to positive infinity. Well, I only have infinity on one side, so I can't write all real numbers for the range. But if I think, okay, that right there, we'll flip them to put the variable on the left, and I'd get that as an answer. All right. So look at number 12 next. So we got our last one to do. So if you haven't tried number 12, pause the video and try number 12 on your own. All right. For number 12, my domain, how far to the left? Well, I see an arrow going to the left and another arrow going to the left. So this one definitely goes to negative infinity. How far does it go to the right? Well, right there is as far as it can go to the right. And that's at 5. In the middle of the line is X. And so for this one, I could write it like that or just cut that part right there. Just write that as my answer. Variable's already on the left, so that would be good, just like that. And then lastly, for range, how far down does it go? Got an arrow going down, so negative infinity. How far up? I got an arrow right there going up to positive infinity. So I have negative infinity to positive infinity, which means I could also write all real numbers. All right, there you go. 4 examples of that last group. So go ahead and try the next 4 problems.